And we live. Happy Wednesday and welcome to another Everybody Can't Go Convo. I'm your host, Jessi Holley, and today I want to talk about the way we make decisions. Okay, so I want to talk about being purposeful, not emotional in communication and decision making. I know that's a mouthful, I know that's a lot, but that was the best way that I could sum up some of the points that I wanted to make and talk about today when it comes to communicating so that you're able to get a good outcome. And when you're looking at getting a good outcome, that does take intention. And when you're looking at being intentional, you do have to be purposeful in how you're communicating with other people. And when we're communicating, it's always emotion involved, always, always. But sometimes we aren't very wise in what types of emotion we allow to come out in our communication. So when we're making decisions, that becomes sometimes imperative to what it is that we're trying to achieve, even if what we're trying to achieve is letting ourselves be heard and understood. Sometimes our emotions can get in the way of that. It can, the very thing that you were attempting to make happen, you could be counteracting the very thing that you were trying to get across because of the way that you are communicating it with emotion instead of communicating it with a purpose. So, first, I want you to make sure that you feel it. I always tell you that. Make sure that you feel your feelings. I'm not saying bury it. I'm not saying press it down. I'm saying to feel it, feel those emotions, but don't lead the conversation with those emotions. There's a difference between acknowledging your emotions and just letting them things run wild. That I can't control it. I just got to say it like this. I can't help it. That's just the way that I am. I'm expressing myself. Okay, okay. But are you letting your emotions drive your decisions and drive the communication? You should be in the driver's seat of where you're going, what path you're going down, and the destination that you're trying to get to when you're looking at communicating, and especially when you're looking at making a decision. Whether you're talking about something as simple as the decisions that you make when you go to the grocery store so that you can make sound decisions. What do we always say? Make sure that you don't go get groceries on an empty stomach because it's going to affect your decision making. There's a difference between you done ate good and you go into the grocery store, magically you make the decision to only pick up the stuff that you need. You can stick to that budget, stick to that grocery list. You don't need not an extra bag of cheese puffs. You don't need them hot Cheetos and you don't need an extra carafe of orange juice. You could leave the Simply Lemonade right there in the cooler, but let you be hungry. Don't let you be hangry. Now we gotta have this, and you know what? No free promos. Shout out to Simply Lemonade. But now you got the strawberry, the regular. You gotta have your Simply Orange, and just for the heck of it, because you like it with high pulp, he like it with no pulp. Now you got four juices, and you ain't go in there for no juice. You went in there so that you could get a pack of water. What are we doing? These are the types of things that happen when you let your emotions lead or drive your decisions. And the same thing happens with communication. Now, I know it sounds all like fun and games when I use the analogy of talking about the grocery store, but let's get serious. When you're talking about letting your emotions drive the conversation when you're communicating, you lose clarity and you lose strategy when you are communicating with your emotions first because you aren't necessarily thinking as clearly as you could. I don't want to say you're not thinking straight, but you aren't thinking clear or as clear as you could, and you definitely aren't thinking about how to move with strategy when you allow your emotions to lead. Because I mean, let's be real. You toe to toe. arguing with somebody, you gonna let your emotions get the best of you. Would it feel good to knock the living daylights out of them? Absolutely. It would feel amazing. It would feel amazing because your emotions start at the back of the brain. Shout out to Quest. He has beat this into my head, figuratively, not literally. We're talking about how we literally, neurologically, we feel our emotions first. That's because the emotions start in the back of the brain and it takes time for them to move to the front of the brain where logic occurs. The pause that we have to take happens somewhere in the middle. He always talks about there's three parts of the brain when you're moving from moving and thinking and communicating with raw emotion or communicating after you have processed the emotion and you're thinking strategically, you're thinking with clarity, and you're moving into um, basically filtering those emotions through the logical part of your brain. That's part of what helps to not just like you ever been mad and you was trying to get your point across and you just shouted out all this stuff and then later you like, dang, I sounded stupid. I should have said dot 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 dot. It's not because you're dumb. It's not because you're stupid. It's not because any of those things. It's literally because you spoke in raw emotion. You didn't strategize. You didn't even synthesize in your own mind the feelings and the emotions that you were having. So if you didn't even think about it to yourself and synthesize it to yourself, how could you communicate it clearly? See, even me saying it, I'm getting tongue tied. How could you even communicate clearly what your emotions were when you didn't even take the time or have time to think through what those emotions are, were, what they felt like, why they felt that way, and what is it that you're actually trying to say? If you just let the emotion and you just like emotions go, you gonna say a whole bunch of stuff that don't really make sense. It doesn't make sense because you're just speaking feelings and you haven't thought about it. And so, in order to be more effective in our communication and our decision making as well, we need to think about what our feelings are so that we're able to communicate them in a way that makes sense. And make sure that we're not just sitting up there yelling just so that we can get it out. And we ain't really made it nowhere other than just yelling. And they solved the doggone thing. So that will bring me to my second point. Purpose over proving a point. When you are communicating what your emotions are, especially when you are having an emotionally charged conversation, make sure that you don't fall over into that realm of you are so emotional in the conversation that you're no longer trying to get to a solution. You just worried about being right instead of being effective, instead of getting to a solution. Did you slow down for long enough and take enough time to think about how you feel so that you're able to be clear, be concise, and to be effective in how you communicate what your emotions are? I can tell you that screaming, hollering, yelling is probably not effective. Because if you at that point, more than likely, whatever it is that you shouting out, it don't make logical sense anyway. It might halfway make sense, but I can guarantee you it's not fully effective. It's not as effective as it could be. It might feel good to get it out, but the long-term effects of how you had to get it out because you just couldn't help yourself, you had to get it out that way. Did you really get the dub? Even if you argued it the other person down to make yourself right. What did it do? Did you win that fight but lose the war? Because you were so focused on you just had to be right. And in the long run, after you went back and thought over some of the things that you said or did during that highly emotionally charged conversation, were you really right? Or did the other person just get tired of going back and forth with stupid? Yeah, I said it. I did. And I said it in a not so nice way because I really want you to consider it. I'm not gonna cap with y'all. That is one of the things that made me be like, you know what? Let me make sure I think when I get mad before I start talking because I've done it. I've said some stupid stuff when I didn't think about what I was going to say. And I'm like, self said, I was like, girl, that didn't even make no sense. Nope, it didn't. And that wasn't even what you meant. And then you got to go back, apologize for your foolishness. And you still got to think about what was it that you meant and what were you trying to communicate in your anger or in your sadness, in your hurt, in your insert emotion here. And might I add, this is a good place for you guys to go ahead and take a look at the emotion wheel so that you are able to identify and learn ways to um other ways to communicate what emotions it is that you are feeling. Sometimes we have trouble with um talking about what emotions it is that we're feeling because we don't have the language surrounding like the description of what it is that we're actually feeling. So I mean, if you don't have the language, you can't think it to yourself, therefore you aren't able to communicate it out of your mouth to other people. So I'll pull the emotion wheel link for you guys. It's in the show notes below, so you can go ahead and click that and check it out. Pause the episode, or check it out after. Take a look at that emotion wheel, and what you do is you start in the middle. That is the main emotion. And then when you move to the second ring outside of that, that is the secondary emotion. So you're going into a little bit more detail. And then when you get to that larger outer ring, there are even more sub details of what that initial feeling was. So you're kind of moving from an elementary feeling of I'm mad. Well, what kind of mad are you? And so that's the type of way that you would use that emotion wheel. And it gives you a lot to think about in terms of how to describe what it is that you're actually feeling. You may not just be mad, angry. There may be some underlying things like you're hurt, you're disappointed, could be disgusted. How many times have you described yourself as, oh, well, what's wrong? I'm, you know what? I'm disappointed and disgusted. That's not typically a way that you hear people describe that I am angry, I am sad, I'm hurt. So, um, make sure that you put that focus on being effective when you are when we're talking about that purpose over proving a point. If you're to the point in a conversation where you are just trying to prove your point, you should probably give it a sec, take a step back so that you can make sure that you're being strategic in staying anchored in what the purpose is in your part of the conversation. Now, you can't choose a purpose for someone else's half of the conversation. Again, you get to choose and you can only control your end of what this conversation looks like. So, you know what your purpose is in the conversation, especially during conflict. You know what your purpose is in a conversation. Make sure that your message and the purpose of what you have to say isn't lost in the delivery because you allow those emotions to take over and override or overshadow what it is that you have to say and the purpose of whatever it is that you have to say. And so, even if you need to take a break so that you can keep a cool head, so that you're able to keep your wits about you, or however you would like to describe it, make sure that you, and this is your third point right here, make sure that you pause, then proceed if you need to. If you aren't able to keep your emotions at bay, or you feel those emotions like bubbling up and starting to get you in that space where you're more worried about proving a point, or you can feel it starting to cloud your judgment, or you can feel those emotions rising up and they're starting to affect your tone of voice, your volume, when it starts to affect your body language as you're speaking, possibly even your facial expressions. How are you presenting yourself in all of those different ways? All of those are parts of communicating. even though there's a, I mentioned throughout the first 2 points, talked about, the scream and the holler and all the hooping and acting a fool while you're trying to get your point across. Do also remember body language and facial expression. I forget what the percentage is. Y'all look, y'all gonna have to Google it. But facial expression and body language are very, very, very important in communication. The human brain is reading your facial expressions and your body language more than it is actually listening to and synthesizing what it is that you're saying, which is crazy because we spend so much time on how to communicate effectively. But remember, as a part of that effective communication, we do talk about those facial expressions and that body language behind it as well. And so, when you feel all of those different aspects being affected by the emotions that you're having, if you're starting to feel like the sweaty palms, your mind is starting to race, you're feeling your heartbeat become elevated, you're starting to get tightness in your chest, you can like feel your shoulders coming up as you're getting more tense during communication. Take that pause if you need to. You may need to take a walk. Take a break. Let the other person know, hey, give me a sec. I need to take 5 and we'll come back to this. If you need to remove yourself from the environment, not just remove yourself from the conversation, sometimes you need longer than 30 seconds so that you can get yourself back together and so that you can get your wits back about you. Sometimes it takes time. You you- Sometimes it might take overnight that you gotta take a long pause from time to time. You might need a very long pause so that you're able to think through the emotions that you came to the table with initially. And sometimes there are even more emotions that are invoked as the conversation is happening, as the decision making process is going. If you feel that it's starting to be impacted, make sure that you utilize the power of the pause and then proceed. And again, that's in both communication and in decision making. Don't just, sometimes we get decision fatigue because you have made too many decisions in that day, or you have made too many decisions in rapid succession, or you just don't have the mental capacity to make another decision. It's okay to pause so that you can make sure you are making a decision that is the best for you and others who will be affected by your decision. So there's power in that pause. And you'll want to take a moment so that you can assess things like intent, impact to yourself and others, the intent of yourself and the other person. Again, remember we talked about that. Are you still having a conversation from a space of purpose, or are you having that conversation because you're trying to prove yourself right and then move along? What are we doing when we're having this conversation? What are we doing when we're making this decision? And make sure that what it is that you're doing, whether it's communicating or making that decision, make sure that the communication is in alignment with what you intended to talk about in the first place, and make sure that decision is in alignment with the goals that you have set for yourself. So you'll need to think about that alignment in both cases, whether it's with making decisions or if it's talking about communication. The alignment is important because we don't want you to make an impulse decision or make an exhausted decision just so that you can go ahead and get it over with, get it done, and get it out the way. And when you're talking about communicating, it's the same thing. Are you exhausted with the situation? Are you tired of talking? Is it getting too emotional? You want to make sure that your conversation is still in alignment with the purpose that you set out to have this conversation, that you're still in line with the intent, so that you're not just spewing out words, phrases, or just saying things that you don't mean, and or saying stuff that once you say it, you can't take it back. And once the damage has been done, it's lasting damage. Because the truth is, bump the sticks and stones, words do hurt people. And regardless of your intent, regardless of how you feel or how you felt, some things that you say, once it has left your mouth, you cannot get those words back. And you also will never be able to get back the status of the relationship as it was before you damaged it with your mouth. So it is important, important, important to practice the power of the pause and then proceed. There are some decisions that you can make that once a decision is made, there is no going back. You can circumvent, move around, you can repair it, you can go back and you can go back and fix it. But just like once you break a glass vase, you can go back and you can fix it, but it will never be the same. So make sure that when you are pausing, remember that part of the pause is so that you can continue to be in proper alignment. And finally, my last point that I wanted to leave you guys with is make sure that you're using emotional maturity as a leadership tool. When you choose purposeful communication over emotional communication, you are able to put a focus and an emphasis on the facts. You're not operating in your feelings. Shout out to E in the squad with the facts over feelings. And you're able to make sure that you aren't just giving reactive responses, that you're giving a well thought out response, not just a knee jerk reaction to what someone said or did. That's a part of you get to choose and you staying in control of you. And when you become known for being intentional in how you communicate and being intentional in how you make your decisions, you gain credibility with others. Like you are running up your line of credit with people when you are able to operate in honesty, integrity. You prove yourself trustworthy when you are intentional and purposeful in the way that you communicate so that you're leading people with clarity and strategy as you communicate and as you lay everything out on the table to make the best sound decision for any and everyone involved. That speaks volumes to people, and it's so appreciated because it is hard to do. It can be hard to do to communicate and make decisions from a place of clarity and strategy, especially when it's about something that is highly emotional. But it's a great leadership tool to practice having those emotions in check, having your emotions in check. And don't go out there and say that I told you to check everybody and check them on their emotions. This is about you. This is about self. This is about having emotional control over your own emotions. Now make sure that y'all don't just take take the part of the quote that you want to take. And yeah, she said have emotional control. You don't have emotional control over other people. You can positively influence others to also practice emotional control as they mirror you operating in having control over your own emotions. And operating in that space is not a weakness, that's actually operating in wisdom. You're not going to be able to just get it overnight. You're not going to be able to listen to this pod, write down the 4 points that I made for today, take you some notes, see how you're going to apply it in life, and then you're going to wake up tomorrow just wise as Solomon, and you're just going to have all the emotional maturity in the world, and you're going to be able to handle every communication and every decision with all of the great things that I just talked to you about. But it takes practice. It takes practice, it takes discipline, and it takes a commitment to communicating in that way. And it takes a commitment to implementing these things and remembering them when it is time to make a difficult decision and or when you need to just, oh, you know what? Can't decide on that right now. or I can't have this conversation right now. Give me some time. I will get back to you as soon as I can. This is the part that you don't have to tell them, so that I'm able to get my emotions together, so that I am able to think clearly about what my emotions are, honor them, feel it, but I'm not going to lead my decision or lead the conversation with my emotions. I'm going to gain clarity over what do I feel so that I can think and communicate strategically about what I need or what we need. Very important as a leader. And y'all not gonna get me started on what it looked like when a leader is just emotional, flying off the handle and just saying whatever, whenever. I ain't even got to leave it to you to figure it out because you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you know what it looks like, and it don't look good. It sound crazy, and we know it be sounding crazy. All of the gross inaccuracies that come from I'm just gonna be talking and not giving the time for the emotion that I feel that's starting at the back of the base of my brain to move through my limbic system and get up to my frontal lobe so that I'm able to think logically about what my emotions are and how to effectively communicate those things in a healthy way so that not only can I be heard, but I can be understood, and so that I am able or we are able to move forward with making sound and wise decisions in how to move forward. So that's all I have for you guys for today on being purposeful, not emotional, when you're communicating and making decisions. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure that you subscribe to Everybody Can't Go Convos. Like, share this with a friend. Share this with somebody that you would like to communicate more effectively with. Share this with somebody that you think that these few points it can help them to make decisions better, or it'll encourage somebody to go ahead and take that pause when they need to, so that they're communicating with purpose and not just trying to prove a point. So, thank you guys for tuning in for another Everybody Can't Go Convo. And if you are in the DMV area or you're willing to take a train, plane, I'm not going to say a taxi cab because that would be very, very financially irresponsible and very expensive. But if you want to take a flight out to the DMV area, we are going to be live in DC on Saturday, June 28th for a Pod Peeps DMV meetup. And we have four dynamic speakers in the building, a special guest coming through all the way live from Texas coming in. We have dynamic coaches with accountability, motivation, vision writing, strategy, and all of the content that you could possibly want for any of you content creators and podcasters. All of you guys who are looking at, well, what am I going to do with the second half of my year? Come see us live in DC on June 28th. That's a Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., where we're going to get you all of the strategy that you need. Bring your pens, your papers, your notepads. We're going to do a bit of networking. We have Q&As available, and you'll be able to sit through five different speakers who will be giving you some dynamic talks with all types of goal setting, vision strategy, things that you'll need so that you will be able to make the rest of 2025 the best that you possibly can. And if you have any questions about how to, we will be there to answer those things for you live in person. Go ahead and click the link below. Grab your ticket to Pod Peeps DMV Meetup 2025. So, with that shameless plug, I will bid you adieu and good night. And we will see you guys next week for another Everybody Can't Go Convo.